For decades, Social Security has felt, well, untouchable. Predictable, reliable. And for millions of people, it feels absolutely guaranteed.
But here's the thing. Systems don't actually fail when people panic.
They fail when the pressure builds quietly. Welcome back to Finance Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something millions depend on, but very few of us really examine closely. Now, this video is not about whether Social Security is going to vanish. It's about how small changes can reshape outcomes long before anyone ever calls it a crisis.
Okay, so let's just dive right into this. The biggest strength of Social Security is how permanent and stable it feels, right? The checks arrive, adjustments for cost of living happen, and life just moves on. But that very stability, that can actually hide an underlying fragility.
And this slide right here illustrates the core problem perfectly. On the one hand, you have our expectations. We plan our lives around this thing being absolutely certain, rock solid. But on the other hand, you have the reality of the system, and its ability to adapt to new pressures is, well, pretty limited. Our expectations are just growing way faster than the system's ability to stay flexible. And that gap, that's where the quiet risk is hiding. So where does this pressure actually come from? Well, it almost never announces itself with a big, loud bang. It's not just one single event. Instead, it grows quietly. You see it in things like shifting demographics. People are living longer, having fewer kids, and that just changes the basic math of the system every single year. It also builds up within our national budget constraints, where every dollar has to be fought for. And it accumulates in all those small political trade-offs that get made year after year. Now, individually, none of these feel like a crisis. But you put them all together, and they slowly start to limit the choices that are available down the road. And that is what can impact your retirement. So let's connect this back to you, because this is really the part that matters most for your financial plan. If you're building your future around this idea of absolute certainty, even a tiny adjustment to the system can force you to make some pretty big and often reactive changes. So, the real question is, what could actually change for you? How does all this abstract pressure turn into a real-world impact on your wallet? Well, it often happens kind of like a set of dominoes. It starts small, the rules evolve, maybe a subtle tweak is made to the formula that calculates your benefits. Then eligibility shifts. Maybe the full retirement age inches up again, just a little, or the rules for spousal benefits change. And then, all of a sudden, your plan, the one you built on the old reality, is totally out of sync. Your timing is off, your numbers are wrong, and now you're the one who has to adjust. And that is the key takeaway here, folks. The system doesn't need to collapse or completely disappear to fundamentally change your life and your retirement. Nope. Small, quiet changes are more than enough to do that. This brings us to our final and, I think, most important point. The real risk isn't some dramatic system collapse. The real risk is dependency. It's over-reliance. So, what is dependency risk? It's what happens when your financial plan is just too rigid, when it assumes one single outcome and leaves you absolutely no room to adapt. When your entire plan relies on perfect, unchanging stability from an outside system, your own ability to pivot when you need to becomes dangerously small. Look, understanding risk is not about fear. It's about flexibility. It's about building a financial plan that's resilient enough to handle these small changes without completely falling apart. If this helped you think a little more clearly about this, do me a favor and hit like. It really tells YouTube this conversation matters. And comment below, I'd love to know. Do you treat Social Security as guaranteed in your own planning? And of course, subscribe to Finance Deep Dive if you want to stay ahead of these quiet changes. In the next video, we'll look at something even more immediate: why banks are quietly tightening credit. Thanks for watching.